Well, I've had the pleasure of knowing Lydia Doyle for some time now. I mentioned the St. John's Cemetery and that project there, and she was the person who kind of really helped make the connection in the diocese to Carmen Mead, who's the cemetery director. She did it despite my own incompetence. I went to the wrong location for our meeting, and she was very kind with me. So, but you know, we persevered. She persevered. I stumbled along, but she was very helpful in that, and has been just a wonderful, wonderful beacon of goodwill and faith for this diocese for some time. She grew up in Atlanta, and on this day, the solemnity of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, I think it's appropriate that a woman who grew up at Sacred Heart Parish in Atlanta would be our speaker. And you know, Sacred Heart is really why we started these First Friday things, again, as a way to remember the First Friday devotion. And in fact, before you leave, the drawing is going to be for 2 copies of this book, which has been just recently published by Sister Catherine Ann Flanagan, who is with Daughters of St. Paul, and this is on the First Friday devotion. It's a really wonderful book, and it's a reminder of Sacred Heart adoration and devotion, how they all come together in a beautiful way to deepen our faith in Christ. But so Lydia left Atlanta to go to Notre Dame University, where she got her undergraduate degree, and then went on to University of Georgia to get her law degree. And not satisfied with just getting a law degree, she also got a master's degree in historic preservation, and came to work for the diocese as a director of research and planning, and then the director of planning, strategic planning for the diocese. But you know, was still trying to respond to the prompts of service that the Holy Spirit was kind of prodding her with. And she left the diocese and went and got a master's degree at Trinity University in Dublin in humanitarian aid and nonprofit development, with an emphasis on sustainability and sustaining the service that comes through nonprofits around the world. She returned to be director of Catholic Charities, and that's why we're so blessed and extraordinarily fortunate to have her as our speaker. So would you join me in welcoming Lydia Doyle?
Hey, how are y'all doing today? Doing good? Thank you so much for having me. I've been really looking forward to being here. I've heard so many wonderful things about this group since I've known Frank, I think, since 2013. And since 2017, I've been hearing really amazing things about this group, but have never, I don't think, joined one of y'all's luncheons before. So I'm really honored to be here. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I've also been a little bit apprehensive this week about being here. I emailed Frank on Sunday, and I was like, so, you know, what would you like me to talk about? You know, how does this kind of go? And he gave me the very best advice that he possibly could, and it's completely accurate, which is, let the Holy Spirit guide you. And I was like, oh boy. So I've spent the week a little bit sort of reflecting on my journey through service, my faith journey. And even that, to be honest, has been a little bit intimidating because I was born and raised Catholic, went to the Basilica of Sacred Heart in Atlanta, was raised there. And I have been called and involved in service work for so long, I still, after a full week of trying to think of the first time I was involved in service, I still have absolutely no idea when that was. It's just always been a part of my life. So I couldn't tell you for sure when that started or even how it started, just that it's always been there. And I can't imagine a way that wouldn't be a part of me. It just is. So growing up in Atlanta and growing up Catholic, it was actually, as I was thinking about all of this week, it was interesting to me because I was always very involved with the church. We had youth groups, we did retreats. It was a great community. Like, I loved Sunday school. We were involved all the time. Like, it was just a fantastic group. And I was also always involved in service. But the two were never connected. I went to a very secular school, first grade through 12th. It was actually a school that was founded by a group of Boston hippies who got bored after the Vietnam War and came to Atlanta and started a school, so that's where I went. It was like the least Catholic thing. But they were very dedicated to service and to giving back. And so actually most of my engagement through service work was either through family or through school. And so thinking about it, it never really occurred to me until this week, until Frank was kind enough to prompt me that the two things just hadn't really been connected. And even when I went to Notre Dame, I served all throughout. I volunteered multiple times a week, and it was just always something that I did. But it was, again, it was a secular service organization. It was not a religious one. So it still was not something where my faith and the service were necessarily connected. They were both always there, just not in the same place. And sort of going through after law school, all those, continued through my time in Athens, and then I moved up to Western North Carolina, my first job out of law school. I made the mistake of graduating from law school in 2008 when the entire country was in a hiring freeze, but I was lucky enough to get a job first with the state of Georgia, and then with a nonprofit historical society in Western North Carolina, where I was the executive director for 2 years. It was in Cashers, North Carolina, and there is a Catholic church there, and I think it's maybe changed, but when I was there, I hate to put it this way, in some ways it was the punishment parish. It was like the parish where people were sent who maybe needed to be separated from something else. And I never had an issue with any of the priests there. They were all very nice, but they also, I don't think they wanted to be there, and they made that known. So like I remember one year I took time off of work to go to the Ash Wednesday service at the parish, and the priest was an hour and a half late. Not because he was coming from somewhere else, he was just at home and just hadn't, which was right next door, and just hadn't come yet. So that was kind of my experience in that community with Catholicism, and I ended up, unfortunately and not wanting to, but ended up spending more time in the Episcopal and Methodist churches simply because they had services that started on time, and there was a community there, and actually most of those congregations were Catholics who had tried to go to the Catholic Church and had the same experience, and then ended up at the Episcopal Methodist churches. And so there were 2 years before I came here where I really was very separated from my Catholic faith, and I hadn't really realized what that had done to me until I came here, and I came back and went to confession and went through that process of rejoining the church and having communion. And I remember the old chancery offices were over at 1662 Ingram Road, just around the corner, and we had a chapel there. And same as we do here, we had weekly mass for the staff. And so I was over there, and it was just my very first couple of weeks with the diocese. Like I had just started, I knew nobody, absolutely nobody. And so they were like, well, the bishop is about to say mass, and I was running late, and so of course the chapel is packed, and the only seat left is at the very front row, right in front of the bishop. And I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't been going to mass for 2 years, and now I'm just here, and I don't know anybody. I'm now in the front row of mass with the bishop, and this whole thing. And so I was like, that'll be okay. So I sit there, and I find myself in this moment getting so lost and so absorbed into what was happening that halfway through the mass, I just could not stop crying. And I was just sitting in the front row of this chapel just sobbing, and so just with the joy of being back in my Catholic faith and being home. And I still feel certain the bishop in that moment was wondering who on earth he hired. Why is this strange woman sitting in the front row of church just crying? This is for absolutely no discernible reason. But it was one of those moments when I realized that I was home, and that this was home, and that it was not only home because I was back with my faith, but it was also home because it was the first time, in the first place, in the first way, where my passion for service was connected to my faith, and where those two things came together, and where I was able to build and to create a family and a community around all of that. And so that started in 2013, and it has been such an incredible journey the last 11 years being part of this community. Even when I was in Ireland, I was still like consulting and having weekly calls with people here. I love this state and I love this place, and this has really been my home for so long. And I could tell you, I mean, we would be here for the rest of the, through next week, talking about like all of the stories of the joy that I've seen from the priests across the diocese, from my fellow diocesan and Catholic Charities staff members. But I'll share two things that have happened recently with you. So our field office here in Charleston, they do really amazing work. We've got an incredible food pantry there. We do a program called Save a Smile, where people who don't have access to adequate dental care can get free dentures, so that their dignity is restored by being able to smile, to interact confidently with people around them. They can eat nutritious foods that they weren't able to chew before. It truly is a life-changing program. We do emergency assistance there, so if people need help with like a month of rent or a month of utilities, we do a lot of work to keep people out of homelessness that way, so that, say if you're living paycheck to paycheck and you just have one unexpected bill that you're not going to be able to pay, having somebody step in and just say, I've got you this month, it means the world. Because once you enter that cycle of homelessness, it is so difficult to find your way back out of it. So if we can stop that from happening, it makes a huge difference in people's lives. Same, keeping families together. A lot of times the people we help might be single parents or young parents. So being able to keep the families together, keep them in housing so social services isn't called and stepped in, so the families can stay together, can continue to care for their children. It makes such a big difference. We just helped a young family. The wife was 7 or 8 months pregnant.
She just had the baby
Oh,
the
did
other
she
day.
really? Oh my gosh.
6 pounds, 6 ounces.
So sweet, yeah. They came to us because she was very pregnant and they were living in a shed without electricity, without running water, just around the corner from here. And that was the only housing that they had. And they were desperate to not start their family, to have her not give birth in this shed. And so we came together with several other area nonprofits to get them a house that is sustainable for them, a place to live. We were able to fully furnish it, get them set up with food and everything they need so they have a safe home to start their family and to bring their baby back to. And every day we just run into people with these kinds of stories, and it's so amazing to have this ability to touch people in that way. And we talk all the time at Catholic Charities about the need to not only meet people where they are, to meet their emergency needs, which is so critical, because you can't think about getting out of poverty or doing any of this if you're just wondering where your next meal is coming from. So we have to be able to meet those needs for people, but at the same time, for the people who are ready to move out of poverty, to be able to walk with them on those journeys, to be able to help them into the next phase of their life and to take that accountability. Not everybody is ready for that, and that's okay, but for those who are, we really love to see them move out. And actually, this happened just a couple months ago. Anytime I interview somebody, I always ask them the question, we've got your resume, I've got all the facts, but what brought you here? Like, what called you to apply for a job with Catholic Charities? And that honestly usually tells me just about everything that I need to know about the person. It's just the answer to that question. And somebody who I was interviewing a couple months ago said to me, and this is just one of those moments when you become so proud of the history and everything that's gone before, is this person said, they were like, I've always felt so incredibly connected to Catholic Charities because when I was young, my family was very poor and we were on hard times, and the only reason we made it out of that, the only reason my parents were able to make it through, was because of Catholic Charities. We were one of your clients, and for my entire life I've wanted to come back and to give back to Catholic Charities and to serve, to thank you for what you did for our family. So it's things like that, not only helping people where they are, but also seeing the children of those families come back and to say thank you, and we want the chance to serve. It's truly amazing, and it takes your breath away to have somebody sit in front of you in a power suit telling you that this was their origin, and that's why it means so much to them to come back and to be part of this. So I do want to thank you all for what you do to support the church, to support Catholic Charities, for being here, for being part of it. It means so much to everyone, not just in Charleston, but across the state. We work with people. We're a statewide organization. We're one of the few nonprofit social services statewide organizations. So we're really proud to be able to have that sort of breadth of perspective to understand the entire state in that way. It makes a really big difference. So thank you all for the support and for what you do. The two things I will leave you with, the first one is the unfortunate news, that's bittersweet. My fiance has gotten a job in Tallahassee, so God has called me to move to Florida.
Wow.
A sentence that I never thought that I was ever going to say. So I hear.
A good state.
Yeah, so I will be here until October. I'm very, very sad to be leaving, but I would challenge you all in these moments and as we move forward to please continue to find ways to connect your faith with our call to serve. Jesus calls us to serve throughout the Gospels. This is integral to his message to us, that we be of service to each other. It's inherent, it's a moral imperative in Catholic social teaching that we serve each other and that we be of service to our communities. So please, the request that I would have of you is to pray for the work of Catholic Charities, to pray for the people who we serve, and also to find ways in your life, whether it's prayer, whether it's reading, whether it's volunteering or donating, to please connect your faith to this call to service. It really deepens both and it enriches your experience, both as a Catholic and as a community member. So thank you all for your time today. I would love to answer any questions that you have about Catholic Charities and the work that we do.
Lydia, thank you. So may I start with one question?
Of course.
And then, and that is, I mean, your life story kind of, exemplifies, I think, the challenge, and we've talked about it,
Yeah.
I mean, the challenge in the many extraordinary organizations that the church has created and now works within a kind of professional, cultural milieu that professionalizes its staff and then, and then makes it a secular enterprise as opposed to a faith-filled enterprise. How do you see, and because evangelization is so critical to the culture today, how do you see blending those things back together so that service and evangelization are more comfortably one and more consciously expressed?
Oh no, absolutely. I think, now I'm so excited. I think they are so inherently one, because bringing people, it's amazing when you bring people in to serve, when they spend a day in the food pantry, when they spend a day with us, you immediately see God in our clients. You see God in the work. You experience God in the community of people who are there. So this act of being part of a group, of being part of service, God is so present in those moments, and you can just feel that in your soul, that he is right there. People come in either as clients or as volunteers, and you can't escape the presence of God there, because it's just so rich, and he's so alive in those spaces. So, evangelization, I think, is 100% tied into service work, into what happens. And I think the two are inextricably linked, because everywhere we go, we are Catholic, and we represent the Catholic response to the needs of our community and to what we are called to do. And as we bring people in, we evangelize and we share who we are. We serve everybody. I don't care if you're Catholic or if you're not. Everybody can come and get served by us. But they also know that this that we are called to this work and that we are serving them and we are serving everybody because we are Catholic. And because that is what we are called to do, that is who we are, and that is what we do. And that means so much to the people who come in, because they go other places and they're told, we can't help you because of X, and we can't help you because you're this. We don't care. We are Catholic. We are here to serve you and to help. And that is just part of who we are. And I think the evangelization, it then just happens, because that is the message of the Catholic Church, that we are universal love. Does that get to you? Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Lydia, first of all, God bless you.
Yeah.
Amazing work. How does Catholic Charities complement, work in unison with, or in addition to St. Vincent de Paul within the local parish system?
Yeah.
Multiple questions. That would be one,
yeah.
and then am I sensing almost a case management type role in addition to the financial support as and if necessary? Is there that kind of case management opportunity?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so we call Palakia over at the Charleston office, we call her our client advocate. So she is the person who walks with the client, to answer your last question first and then backing up
Sure,
to the, yeah.
sure.
And so she walks with clients. So a client comes in and they have all of these needs. Well, maybe we can meet these while they're there, but we can also then connect them to all of these other organizations to say, okay, well, let me put you in touch with St. Vincent de Paul, and let's make that connection so you can get this through them. And we can connect you to, whatever else, to Roper St. Francis, or to whoever it is, to say, here's how us as an entire community can help you, and here's how we as the Catholic Church can help manage that for you and to help walk with you through that journey. So it's not just, here's your can, off you go, we're out. But we really are here for you. And if we can't meet the need here, then let's connect you to someone who can, and let's help manage that for you. And so I do think there's so many amazing things happening in St. Vincent de Paul and at the parishes, and we do a lot to try and connect with them. I will say I think there's a lot more that we can do to reach out and to make those connections, because there is all of this incredible work happening, but it's easy as we all kind of get going for that to get a little bit siloed, and for us to just kind of be doing this amazing work without kind of a universal view of what's happening. So something that we've been talking a lot about is how do we better coordinate the work of St. Vincent de Paul, the work of the parishes, the work of Catholic Charities, not taking away anything or trying to steal anything, but how do we coordinate that so that we can say, this is truly the Catholic response. This is all of us together, working together to create a Catholic response. And actually, Linda Novello is, that is what she does, is work with the parishes and St. Vincent de Paul to bring us together. And that's a new role for us, and Linda is just doing an amazing job, because we created the role because we recognize that that need is there to better coordinate and come together.
And just the last follow-up, do you have a furniture resource when you're settling and resettling people? Do you have a resource for furniture?
St. Vincent de Paul.
And
Furniture.
In North Charleston,
Yeah.
St. Vincent de Paul has they are the ones that we go to for the furniture. We right now at this time don't have furniture at our coastal office.
Right.
We do it in Hardyville,
Mhm.
but locally we don't. So we work very closely with the St. Vincent de Paul in North Charleston when there are furniture needs.
So this is for offline for later, but I'm involved with a ministry that works with about 18 different agencies in town called Hope to Home. And I don't know if Catholic Charities is one of our referring agencies or not, but I'd like to make it so.
That would be
if
wonderful.
that's
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. Let's connect on that.
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be wonderful. Thank you. Yeah.
That's great.
Yes, sir.
You had a comment earlier that I thought was really interesting, and I wonder if you'd kind of expand that a little bit, and maybe from your background, you're quite an accomplished person. You've done you have a lot of degrees. Anybody that keeps going back to school like you have done is hungry for something, and they're very, very driven. Okay, and then you're working with a lot of people that can be hard to find their drive. And you made a comment a few minutes ago. Some people are not yet ready to leave poverty, and some are.
Yeah.
And that's a very, I think, a profound statement. And I think it's something that we don't maybe spend enough time on.
Yeah.
And I'm just interested in how you think about that and where you came to that it's like almost like you reconciled something in your head about this, and that's how you manage it, and it's kind of like some more thoughts on that, and like how can we be most effective on finding those who are ready, and then helping them
Yeah.
versus spreading stuff around all over the place when people are not really ready to do anything. It just falls on ground that is not ready to be, the plants aren't ready to grow. I don't know.
No, absolutely, and I'm not gonna lie, that was a tough lesson for me to come to, and it's one that took a lot of time, because, you know, you come into this work and you're like, I wanna work myself out of a job, and there's not gonna be any more poverty, and we're gonna like get everybody out of this, and this is gonna be amazing. And you know, that bubble burst quite quickly, but which is fine. But you know, you see people come in, and you know, and it's hard to put an exact finger on it, because a lot of it is just talking to people and listening to where they are and listening to their journey and what they've gone through. And what I ended up realizing is that I needed to, within myself, find a space to have more, not just patience, but also empathy and compassion for what they've been through. Because if somebody, and this is not at all unusual, they grew up in desperate poverty, they maybe experienced abuse, addiction, families with addiction, mental illness, just trying to survive that has taken all of the energy that they have. And so for them, even like contemplating getting out of that is too much. Like, it's too stressful, because that's another change that's too big. They've already been through so much, and where they are now, they know it's not perfect, but it's comfortable because it's familiar. So there's that kind of component of it where you have to meet people where they are. And if that's where they are, then that is where you meet them, and that is where you stay with them. And if that is the only place that they're ever going to be, then that may be the only place they're ever going to be. But some people, as you're talking, a lot of it ends up being building relationships. So as you talk to them, and as you work with them, and as they learn to trust you, if they're coming in every week and you've paid their rent, if you've given them food, if they feel like you're somebody that they can talk to and trust, that's when you can start sometimes having those conversations. Well, have you thought about this? Like, have you thought about now you're a little bit set up here, have you thought about what you're doing tomorrow? Have you thought about what you're doing next week? And seeing how they respond. And some people will immediately just be like, no. And some people are like, well, no, I haven't. And so then you can sort of open the door. Okay, well, let's talk about that. And it's slow, and it's gradual, and it's on a person by person basis. But it starts with compassion and empathy and listening to them. And I think anything that we can do to center our clients in the work that we do, and understand that they're all, even though we see the same themes come up over and over again, each of the people we encounter is unique, and being able to recognize them as unique, and to not make assumptions about them, and to walk with them on that journey, whatever it is, I think is really
I think you just
critical.
described Jesus' approach
That's right.
with everybody ever met.
So that's just, yeah. So, yes, sir.
The Catholic Church is like the salt of the earth, in the sense that I was a Protestant pastor for like 20 years in the inner city, and we had a shelter and a leadership school in adopted neighborhoods, and fed people every day. And we had what we called the daily deacon, because people would walk into the ministry center and just come right to my office and go, I need some food or whatever. And we had resources that we would tell them to go to, and it was almost all, oh, just tell them to go to Catholic Charities or St. Vincent de Paul. Let the Catholics pay for it, they'll take care of it. And I want to say that what a good work y'all do, just from someone who hasn't been involved in the Catholic Church, knowing that there's a lot of charities and nonprofits that are counting on the Catholic Charities and St. Vincent de Paul. Those are the two major, other than our own group, those are the two major sources that we would turn to. And then I'm involved in something right now called Oxford House, and there's I don't know how many, I think 11 in the area, and they're like recovery homes. And it was funny because just this week I was in a chapter meeting, and they're like, oh, you know, if somebody comes new to your house and they can't pay their bill, send them to the Catholic Church, Catholic Charities. I'm around to the same answer again. But my question, because in all that process, I never really knew, other than like St. Vincent de Paul, I know that we would go through a local Catholic church, and they wanted to get a reference from me as a pastor to say this person's really trying and they could use some furniture, and then that Catholic church would contact St. Vincent de Paul. But what's the process? Like, these people are getting rent to help them get, like a lot of them are re-entry from prison, they're going into these sober living houses, and they are getting help from Catholic Charity. But how does that process work? Do they just call your office and someone screens them?
Here in Charleston, that is how it would work. They would call our office and we would screen them. In our Columbia office, we do have a more established prison reentry program called Restorative Justice. So up there, the South Carolina Department of Corrections, SCDC, helps us identify those individuals who are about 8 weeks out from reentering society and who are at risk of leaving prison and entering homelessness upon reentry. And so we start working with those individuals usually 6 to 8 weeks before they leave prison, so that when they leave, we make sure that they are set up with housing, so that they're not just being dumped onto the streets when they come out. We also make sure they have all of their critical documents, so things like a birth certificate, a driver's license, a social security card, so they can access services, so they can exist and function in the world. A lot of them don't, about 80% of our clients don't have any of those things. So even once they get out, even if they have money, you can't really get a hotel room or do anything if you don't have any form of ID. So we make sure everybody has the legal identification so that they can move through the world. And then we stay with them usually for 18 to 24 months, connecting them to other services, helping them where we can. We have attorneys who can help us expunge other charges from their records if that's needed, helping access prescription care and medical care. So it is, we get a lot of referrals from other nonprofits and even from cities and state agencies, and we're proud of that. We're proud that we can be there to serve in that way. The way that ends up functioning is slightly different depending on the region of the state and kind of what's going on, but we do get a lot of people everywhere we are who are fresh out of prison, who either call or who we know about on their way out. Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me more about the SMILE program, the dental care? Are there any certain qualifications to be eligible?
Yeah. Do you know what the income level is? Do they have an income threshold?
Is there-
for that?
I believe there is.
Yeah.
There is an income?
And I believe so, and it's,
Yeah.
you either need a full set or a partial, they
Yeah.
sometimes
For
will do a
denture,
partial.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, but it is income driven, and
Mhm.
that's not my.
Yeah, and so sorry, I don't have
yes.
the yeah, so they come in and they say, you know, we either need full or partial dentures, and we partner with a dentist here in town. And so they go in and the dentist will do the extraction, so any teeth that need to still be pulled, and they'll fit and mold their mouth for dentures, and then the dentist bills us for the work, and we pay the dentist.
Do they do implants? No?
No.
We do not
No
do
implants. That's more expensive, right?
Yeah, so we just do the dentures right
Yeah.
now.
Because I know a young man in his late 40s,
Mhm.
and he's with some difficulties, but he's
Mhm.
interested in implants. But
Well,
at
he's hoping-
that age, you know.
Yeah, oh, it's so tough.
Yeah.
At some point, dentures will probably become passé anyway.
It's true, yeah. Right, yeah, so,
Lydia, we have time for one more question.
okay. Yes.
You talked about all the things that you're currently doing.
Mhm.
What's one thing you'd like to be doing but you're not right now?
There's so many things, oh my gosh. Sorry. Oh, you know, that is a long, long list, so but the few things that are on it, I would love to find a way to be more impactful in the housing space. I'm really, really glad that we're able to pay for rent for people and that we're able to cover it. But housing is such an issue. People coming in who just can't access housing in all of our major markets, not just Charleston, although we know it's true here too. Housing is prohibitively expensive for the people who are on a blue-collar wage salary. And then if they're having to drive from somewhere far out, like an hour or more away, then transportation becomes an issue because then they need a car that's reliable enough to get them that far. So I would love to find a way to be more impactful in the housing space. I would love to do more to serve our rural communities. We have a huge amount of poverty in our urban centers, but there is a very different, but also very deep level of poverty in our rural spaces between. And poverty in our rural counties looks very different than poverty in cities. And so, and a lot of times poverty in rural spaces looks like somebody who's been couch surfing for the last 2 years. It looks like someone who maybe eats once every other day or who only gets food from school for their children. So I would love to find a way to be more present in our rural spaces and to be a better service there. I would also love to find a way to do more work with trafficking victims. That is, we see a lot of people coming through who are victims of human trafficking. And that takes a couple of forms, whether that's sex trafficking or whether that's work trafficking. So that happens a lot with migrant farm workers who come in. They come in on a visa to work at one farm, and then the farm owner will trade them to a different farm, and all of a sudden they're off the system, and at that point they're technically illegal, even though they came in legally and they didn't do anything wrong. They've now been transferred somewhere else where they're in jeopardy. So it's a big issue on a few fronts, and I would say those are maybe the three that I would, love to be more impactful on.
What do you think is